All right, so I got to finish up talking about these blog posts that philosophers have made, which I know people are just waiting on this next one. So I want to, okay, we're over here then, and this is the blog of Matthias Michel, who is a philosopher working on the cognitive neuroscience of consciousness. And this blog, yet another blog on consciousness, highly recommended. It's very cool, interesting work that's being done here. So this is a post that he recently wrote on the IIT kerfuffle that's been going around, and especially the so-called unfolding argument. So if you don't know about the unfolding argument, basically IIT says that it's the amount of integrated information that matters to consciousness, that consciousness is integrated information. And where integration is to be integrated is a structural feature of the thing. It's not a matter of a function, but it's a matter of the architecture, the cause and effect power that the system has on itself, so to speak. And how many ways you can section it or slice it and not lose any of its any of the information. Okay, so the unfolding argument basically says that you could take any system that's integrated in this way and unfold it so that all of the same things were being done, but the connections were not integrated, the information was not integrated. So you take the system and you unfold it into something that's functionally the same. It does all the same stuff. It acts in exactly the same way, but it isn't integrated. So that's roughly the unfolding argument. There's mathematics behind it. And it's a lot more formal than that. And then there was a response and a response to the response. And this blog post from Matthias is picking up on the response, right? Okay, so let's just read what it says right here. This is the Dissociative Epiphenomenalism. So they say, this is a consequence of the unfolding argument. For example, we may wire this robot to always experience the smell of coffee independently of what it claims to perceive. The robot may perform complex tasks and report about them, but according to IIT, consciously never experiences anything other than the smell of coffee. So the way you would do this, according to IIT, is you make sure that all the stuff connected to behavior is feed forward stuff, not integrated. And you make sure that the stuff connected to the smell of coffee experience is integrated in the right kind of way. And then you have this disassociation, this dissociative epiphenomenalism, as they put it. So alternatively, they go on, we can wire up the robot so that conscious percepts permanently change completely independently from the robot's behavior. And so, it's always saying that it smells coffee, but going through all these things. And this is because IIT's consciousness is truly disassociated from this. We may all be such creatures, right? For all we know, according to IIT, we could be completely out of touch with this. So Matthias's point here is that they've made their argument weaker. And the way that he wants to show this is that there's a kind of paradox. And the basic idea behind the paradox is that the axioms of IIT, the very first axiom is the axiom of existence, which says that we know with certainty that consciousness exists. But if you really take seriously this unfolding stuff, then we can't really know with certainty that we are conscious without also knowing that we have integrated information. So we'd have to know the structure of our own brain, as Matthias jokes in the article. So the fact, and the reason why this is because the existence postulate says, okay, we know consciousness exists. So you come up with the theory of IIT, and then you go, okay, well, how do I know I'm not a feed forward mechanism? Well, I guess I had to check my own brain. So is it possible that I be one of these dissociative epiphenomenal creatures? I believe I have conscious experience with absolute certainty, and yet I don't, or I have different, or it's disassociated in this way. Now, for one thing, I would quibble just at the beginning that you could have absolute certainty without phenomenal states, since I think cognitive states are phenomenal, that there's something that it's like for you to have absolute certainty or believe something with absolute certainty. But let's leave that aside. Okay, so that's very paradoxical, because if IIT is true, then we should have some reason to doubt the existence claim. That's basically how he wants to develop this argument, right? So here's unfolded Tononi. So unfolded Tononi has all the same functional states as the actual Tononi, the creator of IIT. And just like the actual Tononi, unfolded Tononi believes in the axioms of IIT with a high degree of certainty, a caveat aside. So, and he's most certain of is the axiom of existence, which is that he knows this best of all. The thing he knows with most certainty is that consciousness exists. But in the unfolded world, there is no consciousness. And so this is supposed to be some evidence that the taking IIT seriously should give us some reason to doubt the axiom of existence. So that's the unfolded Tononi paradox, as Matthias says right here. If IIT is true, the existence axiom has to be true, okay? But IIT also says that unfolded entities are possible. These entities can be just as certain, in a functional sense, of the axiom of existence as you are. But what makes you so sure you're not one of them? The answer can't be that you know that you're conscious. Unfolded entities would be just as certain. I think the answer is that we know that we're conscious, and that they wouldn't be just as certain because they wouldn't lack the phenomenology of belief, but okay. Their functional state of certainty, that would be true, would be realized in an unfolded architecture. That's the case. I'm not a fan of IIT, by the way. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm trying to think about the argument. So the only way for you to know that you're conscious is to know you're not an unfolded entity, and that's a bit strange. But we now know that that if IIT is true, the existence axiom is false. You can't know with ultimate certainty that you are conscious. That's the way that Matthias wants to run the argument here. Now that's very interesting. Now, if you scroll down here, you can see that some of the people he's talking about have responded. So Aaron Scherger says, very fun to read. It seems that you are on a slippery slope towards illusionism. If beliefs are functional states, then so is the belief that there is something else to explain about internal states other than the mechanics of neuronal networks, information processing, metacognition, etc. To which Matthias responds, all physicalists should be committed to denying that there's something extra over and above the physical stuff you mentioned, not just illusionists, right? Right, so all physicalists are going to deny that there is something extra. Some of us aren't going to deny that it seems like there's something extra. But still, if beliefs are merely functional states, then it's true that the belief that there's something else to explain is merely a functional state. And then if that's all there is to explain is that, then you are an illusionist. That is the illusionist position, as I understand it, that all you need to do is explain the beliefs. But then Matthias goes on to say, functionalists believe that being conscious amounts to performing some functions. So from there, you can't get the kind of scenarios I talk about in the post. You can get all the same functions, but without consciousness. I hadn't noticed that. So what is his point here? His point is that this is an argument against IIT, but not functionalism. And so you could be a functionalist, but not an illusionist, and still have this argument against IIT. Okay, I think that's what's going on here. Interesting. So Eric Switchkable says he's got something similar on this, and I know this paper of his where he talks about Tononi's exclusion postulate. So he says, interesting, such a vivid exploration of the disconnection between IIT's results and phenomenal judgments. I think the same could be said for results that turn on the exclusion postulate. So the exclusion postulate says that, consciousness is identical with the amount of integrated information, unless that integrated information is a subsystem of a system with more integrated information, in which case it's the larger system, which is conscious, and it overrides. So it excludes the phi of the integrated information of the included system. So, and this is a traditional kind of objection. I remember hearing David Chalmers make an objection like this at the talk when Tononi was presenting at NYU, and Chalmers asked, so if I was part of your brain, like if I was shrunk down and became part of a neuron, then I would lose consciousness. And Tony's like, yeah. I have a post on this somewhere. But yeah, so the exclusion postulate is very strange. And I guess Matthias's intuition is, yeah, he says, that's a good point. I never thought about that, but you might find out that you're embedded in a larger phi system. Like, what if we found out that we were somehow part of the planetary or universe-wide phi system that had a larger phi than us? If the universe was conscious or something like that, then our consciousness would be, we wouldn't really be conscious. So if that's right, there are actually multiple threats to the existence axiom from within IIT itself. So I'm going to say my thoughts at the end of this, but these comments are interesting. So that's from Eric and Matthias's response. Interesting, yes. So we have Ned Block, who removed his, okay, oh, it's right down. Okay, so Ned says, 1, skeptical scenarios do not require the unfolding argument. Any physicalist theory of consciousness that identifies consciousness with the realizer of a functional role rather than with the role itself is subject to some such skeptical scenarios. Yeah, exactly. So take the identity theorist who thinks that pain is a certain brain state, so there's going to be a functional role associated with the pain, and you could imagine these sort of skeptical scenarios with these. Okay, so number 2, Ned says, but when you look at plausible candidates for the realizers are functional states, for example, ones that involve recurrent networks or global broadcasting, the neural plausibility that those states could freely vary over functional states as per your skeptical scenarios drops near 0. Okay, maybe IIT has more of a problem here than other realizer theories, but I would like to see the argument. 3, you say the phenomenal properties you actually experience could be totally different from those you believe you experience with whatever level of certainty. Okay, that is what he said. One kind of belief about what one experience incorporates the experience itself. One might express such beliefs as, I am experiencing this now. Realizer theories do not dictate that such beliefs can vary independently of conscious states. So that's controversial, that you could have the conscious experience be part of the cognitive state. But so I'm experiencing this now, that this is supposed to be the experience itself. And there are people who defend that view and say now it's a concept because you're using the experience itself to think about the experience. Like, this is blue, or this feels such and such. So can you have those kinds of states, and what would it mean in the brain for the phenomenal state to be taken up into the cognitive state? I don't think these questions are really well worked out, and I've always puzzled about them. But anyway, it's be interesting to hear what you guys think. But the 4th one, what does he say? In any case, skeptical scenarios don't show anything. Yeah, that's the one that I think is, I thought he would say, consider. If the brain determines all your experiences, then it could have been wired up to input and output organs by mad scientists, so that when you think you are relaxing at the beach, you're drowning in Arctic waters. And when you think you're eating dinner, you are running a marathon. Such skeptical scenarios are extremely unlikely, but not inconceivable. Of course, the disconnect between phenomenology and belief in your scenario is even weirder, but I don't see an argument for inconceivability. Okay, so this is a very cryptic remark here. What the fuck is Ned saying here? Skeptical scenarios don't say anything. I show anything. I think that's a version of his their problems are not our problems comment, which I spoke about briefly in the last video on this stuff. So you can conceive of them. So what? That doesn't show anything all that strange, all that bad for us. But then he says, consider, if the brain determines all your experiences, then it could have been wired up to input and output organs by mad scientists, so that when you think you are relaxing at the beach, you are drowning in the Arctic waters. And when you think you are eating dinner, you are running a marathon. Such skeptical scenarios are extremely unlikely, but not inconceivable. So what's he trying to say? That that we can conceive of these kinds of switching cases, even if it's the brain that determines all your experiences, and it doesn't really matter if it's IIT or whatever, it's just it's the brain. And so whatever your theory about what's going on, it's going to be subject to skeptical scenarios. So you can't really use them to argue against these various theories. I think that's what Ned is saying here. But here yeah. So I mean, I think this is just kind of, he's pushing the line that the conceivability of this stuff is not relevant for what's actually the case. But if you are someone who took that conceivability stuff a bit more seriously and thought it was relevant for what is actually the case, then what should you conclude from the unfolded Tononi kind of consideration? So I think the threat of the unfolding argument is that we have a theory that's not really scientifically testable, because any prediction that is made, you could find in an unfolded system, which they would claim is not conscious. Now, of course, that's not the way that that Matthias is trying to push this line. He's trying to push the line that if you take IIT seriously, you should reject one of its fundamental axioms. And there, I wonder why Ned thinks his response is getting at the point there, because the axiom says it's impossible for me to doubt that consciousness exists. So therefore, it has to exist intrinsically. That motivates one of the tenets of IIT, the idea that that consciousness is real, that it exists, that we know it with absolute certainty. But following the theory all the way to its conclusion suggests that we don't know that we're conscious with absolute certainty. Now, my personal response is that I think that the Tononis of the world would say, no, we do know it with absolute certainty. The functional duplicate doesn't know it, doesn't have certainty. It has a functional state and it says that, but doesn't know it, that we have direct access to the conscious experience in a way that it doesn't. And so we know that we are conscious. And if Tononi found out that he wasn't an IIT integrated system, then he would abandon IIT. It would be like, I know I'm conscious. This theory suggests that in order to be conscious, I have to be an integrated system. I'm not. So the theory must be wrong. So he doesn't consider the option that they would simply say, well, the theory is wrong because I found out that I'm not an integrated system. I don't think that there's any theory of consciousness. I wrote a little short story that sort of that reminds me about a guy who was convinced that solipsism was true and came to be convinced that his own mind wasn't real because he thought solipsism was true, but he wasn't the mind. That somebody else was the one mind. And then to make it a Halloween story, he went on a serial killing spree trying to find that one mind so he could end the existence, which he didn't. He thought if he killed himself, he would just be another dream character. This is all fiction. I don't know why I started this anyway. So I just don't buy these kinds of arguments. For whatever Ned was saying, I think these kinds of how do you know you're not a zombie? How do you know you're not an unfolded system? You have to check your own brain to know if you're conscious. I just don't buy any of those things. We know with near absolute certainty, if not certainty, that we are conscious. And I don't understand why the possibility of these other kinds of creatures suggests that I'm in that scenario, since they lack something and they wouldn't know that they lacked it. And then you want to say, well, how do I know that I don't lack it? And that's because I know that I don't lack it.